All right, you guys, welcome to today's video. So we are going to be doing blonding techniques on brunette hair. This is going to be a really in-depth formula and technique-based video because I feel like brunettes can be really scary, especially when you're a blonde specialist and that's all you focus on. So if you want to see my tips and tricks for taking her lighter, stay tuned. All right, you guys, I am going to start mixing up and I am going to be doing two different formulas on her. I am going to use Schwarzkopf Blonde Me. You guys know this is like my go-to, my tried and true, but I'm going to use 7 volume around her hairline just because that is a little more fragile and we are going to start there. So I wanna make sure that since it's gonna be sitting there the longest, it's doing more of like a slow lift and it's keeping it healthy. So I am mixing 7 volume for that hairline. And then I'm going to do 20 volume for everything else. Normally, if I was doing a brunette going lighter who had either permanent color or they just had like their own dark hair naturally, I'd probably use 30 just to get enough lift. But like you guys saw in the before footage, her hair has faded quite a bit. She's only used shades on it twice. When we did it, we used shades, and then when she touched it up once, she used shades. And since she was like platinum blonde before, obviously it's faded because she has that bleach underneath. So because of that, I feel like she's gonna lift really well. So that's why I don't really need to go past 20 volume. And it's also gonna ensure that we keep her hair really healthy, but we're gonna be able to get that lift that we want as long as we leave it on long enough. So I'm gonna mix up those two formulas, and then I'm gonna show you guys how I like to tackle a process like this. Okay, first thing I'm doing is starting in the front. Visually, this is what you see in the mirror. This is what the client sees. The money piece is really important, but I also like to start in the front when I'm doing a focused, brighter hairline like this, because then I feel like I can build the rest of my foil placement around this. And then I can always rinse this when they are done if they process sooner. So that's another reason I'm also using that 7 volume here, is because it will lift a little bit slower. We start with 7 and then we're gonna transition into 20. So I'm not going to be doing anything crazy. I'm not doing slices. Even if your client wants a really focused money piece, I feel like it's still just safest to start with highlighting when you are doing a brunette, going light, and especially when it's the first session, because we want to see how she lifts. What if she lifted with a band or kind of stripy or too warm and you did all those slices that are now super orange with a band right in the front? So this is the safest way to just first see how the client's gonna lift, and you can still do a brighter hairline while doing this. So I'm doing just back-to-back highlighting. I'm doing a little bit of a thicker stitch pattern just because I don't want it to be like super fine where it does look like a slice, but I definitely want to pack these in close together so it's bright. So I am keeping them pretty close together, especially in the front. And then you can see I did a triangle section. So this is what's going to give us what I like to call a peekaboo mini piece, where it's going to be really bright and focused at the front and underneath, and then there's going to be depth laying over it. That's what's going to give us that peekaboo effect, and it's really, really pretty on brunettes like this where you're going for a lifted look. So then as I'm working my way back to the end of that triangle, I am going to space out a little bit further as I get to the top of that triangle, and then the very last piece you're going to see I'm going to leave out, and that's going to give us that depth right there that lays over the brighter pieces and gives us that peekaboo effect. So that's what I'm doing here. And then another thing to keep in mind is if you do want the hairline to be brighter and you're doing this technique, you can always tease out the ends of the dropouts. So as soon as I'm done in this triangle section, I'm going to take the dropouts, split it into 2, and we are going to tease those, and then we are going to be able to get those pieces brighter. So not only do we have all of those highlights in the front, we now have these dropouts that are going to be lighter as well, giving it an even brighter appearance in the front. You want to make sure that these sections are really fine. You can see that I only had to take 1 on each side because the sections were pretty fine, but if your dropouts were thicker, you can even divide that in half and have like 4 pieces that are dropped out and teased. So kind of just depends on that client's hair.
Till something in me changed, don't know why. You got me high when I'm sober. You make me lonely.
All right, so I started in the front, and then I just go off of her natural part and I do the left and the right. If they tousle their hair or their part, you can go off of the center. So I did the other side, and now I'm doing this side matching what I did. So I'm gonna show you guys here. So the first section right here, I'm going right above the ear. I'm taking a good amount of hair, but it is still a little bit finer. I teased it to back comb. That's gonna give us some depth and give us a lift-in look. Then I highlighted on top of that section, and I'm doing a bit of a thicker pattern so that we have variation in dimension. Then I'm going to use my board with a bigger foil, and this is where I'm going to start feathering my lightener on. I am now using the 20 volume that I'm in the interior, and I'm just kind of feathering upwards into that tease. I'm going to be alternating doing a technique that is some teasy lights like this, and then others that are highlights going further up, so that I have variation with where my blonde starts. Some are further up, some are lower down, and that's really what's going to give us that lived-in appearance. I'm not really going with any specific pattern, like 2 teasy lights to 1 highlight. I'm just doing what her hair wants me to do. I'm visualizing where these pieces are gonna lay, what her depth looks like, where, you know, she has more hair or less hair, and what needs to be done there. So on the next foil, I did just a regular highlight, but you can see that my pattern is a little thicker like we talked about. And then I'm gonna do another one right after that. And then I'm just gonna kind of visualize and place, you know, where I see fit. I like to do highlights kind of like working up the side of the head to bring the blonde up. And then sometimes I go through with a teasy light when I start to get around the sections that match up with the front money piece, so that I can have depth behind that money piece, so that that money piece really pops. Because if I went right behind all the money piece foils and just did highlights, it's all going to blend together. So you need to have that depth to be able to pop everything else, which is why we left that section at the top of the triangle in the money piece area out, because that depth is going to help those blondes look even blonder.
You got me high, but I'm sober. You make me lonely when I'm by myself. I should be free, but I'm hoping that we could be something in the end, something more than friends. In the end, something more than friends. In the end, something more than friends.
I am a fan of tipping out ends, whether it's a brunette or a blonde, but especially with a canvas like this one, I definitely want to tip these ends out just to give her a little more brightness towards the ends. So I am just taking dropouts in fine sections like you saw, teasing them and then saturating. And since those are going to be teased, it's not like these are going to go all the way up to the root. It's just going to add some brighter pieces in between the foils. But I am leaving sections out because that is going to give me depth. So you saw that I left a section out and then I went underneath that. I'm going to tease another section. Those dropouts are really important because to blonde everything is to blonde nothing. I still want that depth in there so it has the low lights and the variation of dimension. And as you can see, I am using the thinner foils for these dropouts. I used the thin ones around the face for the money piece since we were working with smaller sections, and for these dropouts since those are finer sections as well. But everything else I did the bigger foils just because we have, you know, a thicker stitch pattern or teasy lights, and I just need a little more surface to be able to paint everything on and saturate accordingly.
Friends. Thought I'd still be feeling same as the beginning. Waste of time, waste of time. Somehow you intruded, lost in your illusions. I was fine.
Okay, working our way to the back of the head, the pattern that I like to do for most people with lived-in looks is just kind of bricklaying and following the shape of their head. So the first section I am doing is going to be on the nape, and this is going to be in the center. I did a tease, and then I'm saturating right here, and then we're gonna work up just bricklaying where she needs foils. If they have a smaller head, you're gonna be doing most of them in the middle. If they have a larger head, you're gonna pivot and do some on the left and the right on an angle.
That we could be something in the end, something more than friends. We were undiscovered, didn't care for one another. You and I thought I lost my way, but you washed out all the gray. Don't know why, don't know why. You got me high, but I'm sober.
We are also teasing the dropouts in the back as well. I am using the bigger foils for this just because the back of the head you have a little more room to cover. And so on the sides of the head, it's like a smaller section, so I use the smaller foils. But back here, I feel like I have like wider sections I'm working with, which is why I'm doing the bigger foils. But same thing, I'm just bricklaying now, working my way down, leaving sections out so we have dimension, and then just tipping out the ends wherever I want extra brightness. Okay, now comes the toning process. So I like to always tone in different quadrants. So I have her parted down the center, and I'm gonna have one section on the left, one on the right in the back, and then I'll have a section on the left and the right in the front, and then the money piece area that I always treat differently. So that's 5 different quadrants I'm working in. So I'm doing the back right now. And sorry that my arms keep getting in the way and it gets blurry. I hope you can kind of still see what I'm doing. But I'm taking my formula and I am just starting it at the base and then dragging it down. I'm doing more of a smudge technique here. That's where you bring it down about 3 to 4 inches. But then as I work my way towards the front, I'm now in that front section on the right, and I'm gonna do more of a shadow where it's like 2 to 3 inches down. And then it's gonna be a little brighter around the face that you'll see me do that section in a minute, where it's gonna be like a tap, maybe an inch brought down at the very most. So then we have that nice transition of like a tap in the front, a shadow around the hairline and the crown, and then as we work our way back to the back, it's gonna be more of a smudge, because this is how the sun would naturally hit your hair, where you have brighter pieces in the front and it's a little darker in the back, and that's really what makes it look sun-kissed, lived in, and the most natural. I actually did not film the toning process, but basically I just toned everything in at the same time with her base color on, so I let it sit for about 10 minutes, then I did her toner the last 5 minutes and worked it all together. I wanted you guys to see it all dry and straight and finished before we actually put the extensions in. It turned out so beautiful. This blend was amazing, and I'm so happy with how she lifted. She actually really likes the bronze, so she's gonna keep it for a while, but if she wants to go lighter, back to blonde in the future, then I know how her hair lifts, and because of this technique being the first thing we did, it's gonna be so easy to go through and do like a full highlight after if we needed to. So now we are adding in extensions, and we did the colors Kendra, Desmond, and Stu, and this is like the perfect blend of dimension with some lowlights. Some of these shades are rooted, and it just gives us like that perfect brondy combination. My assistant McKenna is doing pass-offs at our salon right now, and she was doing her Cozy Weft pass-off, so that's what she is doing here. If you are interested in our co-stylist program, like if you're a salon owner or someone training an assistant, I will link it in the description box below. It's a 7-page worksheet where they pass off their work, and it makes you confident for them going out on the floor, so it's really helpful. All right, this is the final result. Let me know if you guys like it. If you learned something, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.
I'm so